Staff Sergeant Zephyr Stormhaven had endured 3 years of the most dangerous combat missions the Army could assign, but nothing had prepared him for what he discovered in his own basement when he returned home. The sound that led him downstairs wasn't crying or screaming. It was a rhythmic scratching, like a trapped animal desperately clawing for freedom. When he found the source, his heart shattered into a million pieces. His 8-year-old daughter Luna was locked inside a wooden storage crate, barely large enough for her small body, her fingernails bloody from scratching words into the wood. When he pried open the makeshift prison, the message carved into every surface would haunt him forever. "Daddy, I still believe you're coming home." Master Sergeant Zephyr Stormhaven had earned his reputation in the world's most hostile territories. At 35, he was what the Army called a ghost operative, a combat specialist who could complete impossible missions and vanish without a trace. 3 years of deployments had taken him through Afghanistan's deadliest valleys, Iraq's most dangerous cities, and classified operations that officially didn't exist. But standing in his suburban basement, staring at the wooden crate that had become his daughter's prison, the unbreakable soldier felt something crack inside his chest. All his training meant nothing if he couldn't protect the one person who gave his life meaning. The war had taken his wife. Staff Sergeant Maria Stormhaven died in a convoy attack when Luna was 5. Since then, it had been just father and daughter against the world. Luna had been extraordinary before he left for this final deployment. At 8 years old, she possessed a creativity that transformed their ordinary house into a wonderland. She wrote stories about brave knights and clever princesses, painted murals on her bedroom walls, and could spend hours crafting elaborate adventures in their basement. Her imagination was her superpower. She could turn cardboard boxes into spaceships, blanket forts into magical kingdoms, and rainy days into treasure hunts. Her laughter was music, her questions were profound, and her hugs were the only thing that kept Zephyr's war-torn soul intact. But the child curled inside the wooden crate bore no resemblance to that vibrant little girl. This Luna was skeletal, hollow-eyed, and moved with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that any sound could bring punishment. Her once bright eyes were dull and constantly alert for danger. Her fingernails were worn down to bloody nubs from months of scratching desperate messages into wood. The transformation was so complete, it felt like looking at a ghost wearing his daughter's face. The creative, spirited child he'd left behind had been systematically broken, reduced to a creature that counted days and carved desperate pleas for rescue. 3 years ago, their basement had been Luna's creative sanctuary. Together, they'd transformed the space into what she called the underground kingdom. Fairy lights hanging from the ceiling, colorful cushions in reading corners, and easels where she could paint to her heart's content. "This is where the magic happens, Daddy," she'd announce, showing him paintings of the two of them as knights on quests to save everyone else. Their morning routine had been sacred. Luna would wake before dawn and tiptoe down to work on secret projects, birthday cards, friendship bracelets, elaborate stories written in careful handwriting. When Zephyr came down for his workout, he'd find new treasures, paper flowers taped to walls, crayon drawings tucked under his equipment, notes that said, "I love you, Daddy," hidden in his gym bag. The night before his deployment, they'd spent hours in the basement. She'd painted him a special picture, a soldier and little girl holding hands under a rainbow, with "Come home safe" written in purple crayon. "Promise me you'll think about our kingdom when you're scared," she'd whispered, pressing the painting into his hands. He'd promised, never imagining their magical sanctuary would become her prison. The deployment hadn't been optional. 3-year special operations rotations save thousands of lives but can never be publicly acknowledged. The combat pay and deployment bonuses would ensure Luna could attend any college, pursue any dream. Finding Morgana Darkwater had seemed like divine intervention. She appeared exactly when they needed her most, a former military dependent with flawless credentials and warmth that immediately won Luna over. "Your daughter will be more than safe with me," Morgana had promised. "I'll treasure her like my own child, and your basement kingdom will be perfectly preserved until you return." Morgana's credentials were impeccable. 5 years as a certified child development specialist, glowing references from 6 military families, advanced degrees from prestigious universities. She'd even written articles about helping military children cope with parental deployments. Luna adored her instantly. Morgana knew every Disney movie, could braid hair into intricate designs, and promised to help Luna expand her basement kingdom with new art projects. "Daddy," Luna had whispered on his last night home, "Miss Morgana says she'll teach me to carve designs in wood like real artists do." The contracts were detailed, the background checks thorough. Zephyr signed the guardianship paperwork with gratitude, knowing his daughter would be loved and protected. The last image he carried to war was Luna waving goodbye from Morgana's arms. He never imagined those adventures would become a countdown to survival. The transformation began 12 hours after Zephyr's transport left American soil. Morgana's maternal warmth evaporated the moment Luna's airport tears dried. The woman who'd charmed them both revealed her true nature: cold, calculating, devoid of empathy. "Listen carefully, little girl," Morgana said, her voice sharp as winter wind. "Your father is gone for 3 years, and I'm in complete control now. The first rule is silence. Children should be neither seen nor heard unless I specifically require it." When Luna asked why Miss Morgana sounded different, the response was swift, a sharp slap that left her world suddenly, terrifyingly different. Within 48 hours, Luna learned her beloved basement kingdom was now forbidden territory, except when being punished. The art supplies were locked away, fairy lights torn down, and cozy reading corners replaced with a single wooden storage crate that Morgana called the thinking box. Children who make noise, who cause trouble, need time to think about their behavior, Morgana announced with chilling calm. "And you clearly need a lot of thinking time." The wooden crate became Luna's world. What started as hour-long punishments stretched into all-day confinements, then overnight stays. The box was 4 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet high, just large enough for an 8-year-old to curl up, but too small to stretch or stand. Morgana's justifications were always the same. "You're too loud. You're being disrespectful." Sometimes there was no reason at all, just thinking time, followed by the latch clicking shut. In the darkness, Luna began to scratch. At first, nervous energy, her fingernails dragging against wood, but gradually it became communication, then documentation, then desperate art. She scratched tally marks to count days. She carved her father's name when she missed him most. As weeks turned to months, the messages became more elaborate, more desperate. Day 1, "Daddy will come home soon." Day 156, "The princess is waiting for her knight." Day 456, "I promise I've been good." Day 731, "Please come find me before I forget your voice." Her fingernails became ragged and bloody, but still she scratched, because the messages were her only connection to hope, to the father who might mind, someday, come home and read her desperate pleas carved into wood. Mrs. Eleanor Thornfield, the elderly neighbor, was first to notice something wrong. She'd always enjoyed watching Luna play in the backyard, but after Zephyr left, the yard became empty. Most disturbing were sounds from the basement, rhythmic scratching that went on for hours, like someone trapped and clawing for freedom. When she mentioned it to Morgana, the response was smooth. "Oh, that's just Luna working on woodcarving projects. She's becoming quite the little artist." At Jefferson Elementary, Luna's teacher watched with alarm as her star student simply stopped attending. When she called about absences, Morgana explained Luna was being homeschooled and thriving in a controlled environment. No one suspected the scratching sounds were actually a child's fingernails, wearing away against wood, carving messages that no one would read for 3 long years. 7,000 miles away, Zephyr felt wrongness in every fiber of his being. Their weekly video calls had become exercises in mounting dread. Luna, who used to chatter about her basement projects, now appeared on screen briefly, always with Morgana hovering nearby. His daughter's hands were never visible, always positioned off-camera or hidden. "She's just focused on her studies," Morgana would explain when Zephyr asked why Luna seemed withdrawn. "She's doing advanced wood carving now, quite talented with her hands." But Zephyr knew his daughter. The child on screen moved like someone under surveillance. Careful, controlled, constantly seeking permission with her eyes before speaking. His instincts screamed something was catastrophically wrong. When he requested emergency leave, his commanding officer didn't ask questions. "Your head's not in the mission, Stormhaven," Colonel Morrison said. "Go home, find out what's eating at you." The flight home was 22 hours of pure psychological torture. Zephyr's mind raced through every possibility, each scenario more horrific than the last. His military training had prepared him for worst-case scenarios, but nothing had prepared him for the growing certainty that his daughter was in immediate, life-threatening danger. He'd deliberately not called ahead, planning to surprise Luna with an early homecoming. Now that decision felt like the most important tactical choice of his career. If something was wrong, and every instinct told him it was, surprise would be his only advantage. During the layover in Frankfurt, he called his old squad mate Staff Sergeant Marcus Blackstone, who was between deployments. "Something's wrong, Marcus," Zephyr said, his voice hollow with dread. "I can feel it in my bones. My daughter, she's not the same kid I left 3 years ago." "Kids change, brother," Marcus replied, but his voice carried concern. 3 years is a long time in a child's life. "No, this is different. She looks broken, like someone stepped on her soul and ground it into dust. Trust your gut, Zeph. It's kept us alive this long. Whatever you find when you get home, you handle it. I'm one phone call away if you need backup." The taxi ride from the airport through their suburban neighborhood felt surreal. Everything looked exactly as he'd left it. The same manicured lawns, the same American flags, the same peaceful facade of middle-class normalcy. But as they pulled up to his house, Zephyr noticed details that fed his growing dread. The yard was overgrown despite his arrangement for landscaping services. The windows that should have been bright with Luna's artwork were covered with thick curtains. Most unsettling of all, he could hear it even from the street, a faint rhythmic scratching sound coming from somewhere inside the house. Zephyr entered through the front door, his key still working in locks that should have been changed. The house felt wrong, colder, despite the warm day. The air smelled of cleaning chemicals and something else that made his combat-trained senses scream danger. The living room was sterile, empty of Luna's usual creative chaos. Her artwork no longer decorated the refrigerator. Even family photos had been rearranged to minimize her presence. Then he heard it clearly. The scratching sound from the basement, rhythmic, desperate, endless, like someone trapped and clawing for freedom. His heart hammering, Zephyr descended the stairs. The space that had been Luna's magical kingdom was now bare concrete and shadows. In the corner, under a bare light bulb, sat a wooden storage crate. From inside came the scratching sounds, frantic, desperate, human. With hands that had diffused bombs, Zephyr approached the wooden prison. The lid was secured with a simple latch, easy to open from outside, impossible to escape from within. Luna was curled in fetal position, her hair matted, clothes stained, and too large for her emaciated frame. Her fingernails were worn to bloody nubs, and every surface of the wooden interior was covered with desperate messages carved into the wood. When she looked up, recognition flickered in her hollow eyes, joy, terror, hope, and shame, all warring across her gaunt face. "Daddy," she whispered, "Day 1095. I still believe you're coming home." But what destroyed him wasn't just seeing her trapped. It was reading the progression of messages, a 3-year diary of hope, transforming into desperation. Day 1, Daddy will come home soon. Day 365, 1 year, I'm still waiting. Day 731, 2 years, the princess is still here. Day 195, I still believe you're coming home. His daughter had been counting every single day of imprisonment, maintaining hope even as her world collapsed, believing with a child's faith that her father would eventually save her. In that moment, Master Sergeant Zephyr Stormhaven made the most important tactical decision of his career. The child in that wooden crate wasn't just his daughter. She was his mission, his purpose, his reason for existing, and failure was not an option. Zephyr moved with fluid precision, his special operations training taking over. His first priority was extracting the primary asset, getting Luna out of that wooden prison, and establishing her safety. "Easy, little warrior," he whispered, his voice gentle despite the rage building inside him. "Daddy's here now. You're safe. No one will ever hurt you again." His tactical knife appeared as if by magic, slicing through the wooden latch with surgical precision. The moment the crate opened fully, Luna collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief as circulation returned to her cramped limbs. That's when Morgana appeared at the top of the basement stairs, and Zephyr saw something in her eyes that chilled him more than enemy fire ever had. Not surprise at his presence, but irritation at the inconvenience of his early return. "Zephyr," she said with disturbing calm, descending the stairs like she owned them, You're early. I wasn't expecting you until next month. Explain. Now. His voice carried the deadly quiet that insurgents had learned to fear. Why was my daughter locked in a wooden box? Morgana's laugh was like ice cracking. Your daughter has severe behavioral problems, I'm afraid. She's destructive, violent, and completely out of control. The containment was for her own safety and the safety of others. The lie was so smooth, so rehearsed, that for a split second Zephyr almost questioned what he'd seen with his own eyes. Then he looked at Luna's bloody fingernails, read the desperate messages carved into every surface of her former prison, and the truth became undeniable. Behavioral problems. His voice dropped to the lethal whisper his enemies had learned to recognize. She's 8 years old. She's manipulative and dangerous. Morgana continued, her mask finally slipping to reveal the monster beneath. She attacks other children, destroys property, and refuses to follow basic social rules. I've been trying to rehabilitate her using proven behavioral modification techniques. Zephyr knelt beside his daughter, his hands gentle as he examined the damage. Her fingernails were destroyed, some infected, all showing signs of repeated trauma. Her body was severely malnourished, her muscles atrophied from confinement. But worst of all were the messages she'd carved, a 3-year testament to hope surviving in hell. Luna, baby, look at me, he said softly. Luna raised her head with visible effort, and he saw the full extent of what had been done to her. She was a ghost of the creative, spirited child he'd left behind. But in her eyes, beneath the trauma and fear, he saw something that made his warrior's heart swell with pride. She had never stopped believing he would come for her. I carved messages for you every day, Daddy, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I knew you'd read them when you came home. The world went red around the edges. What happened next would later be analyzed by federal investigators, child psychologists, and military tribunals. Zephyr's training kicked in with clinical precision, not the berserker rage that civilian fathers might experience, but the cold, methodical fury of a special operations soldier who'd identified a high-value target for elimination. He documented everything. His phone captured photos of Luna's condition from every angle, recorded video of her wooden prison, and most importantly, photographed every single message she'd carved into the wood. The progression from hope to despair, and back to determined faith, told a story more powerful than any testimony. Daddy will come home soon. Day 47. I still remember your voice. Day 156. The princess is waiting for her knight. Day 298. Are you still alive? Day 456. I promise I've been good. Day 731. Please come find me before I forget your voice. Day 1000. I try to remember your face. Day 1095. I still believe you're coming home. While he worked, Morgana watched with growing panic as her carefully constructed lies crumbled under his methodical documentation. You can't prove anything, she said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. It's your word against mine, and I have 3 years of exemplary childcare records. Actually, Zephyr replied without looking up from his camera. You have 3 years of documented child torture, fraud of military family benefits, and conspiracy to commit aggravated assault on a minor. He'd already spotted the stack of uncashed support checks on a nearby table, substantial monthly payments meant to ensure Luna's care that had clearly been diverted for personal use. That's when Morgana made her fatal mistake, perhaps thinking to use the child as leverage, or maybe just acting on pure malicious instinct. She lunged toward Luna. She never made contact. Zephyr intercepted her with fluid efficiency, applying a restraint hold that left her immobilized but unharmed. His voice was soft, almost gentle. Don't give me a reason to forget that this isn't a battlefield. The 911 call brought 4 patrol units, 2 ambulances, and an FBI child crime specialist within 12 minutes. Zephyr had Luna wrapped in a clean blanket from his deployment bag, the first soft fabric she'd felt in 3 years. Detective Sarah Chen later said she'd never seen evidence so thoroughly documented by a civilian. Zephyr's military precision had created an airtight federal case. At Children's Hospital, Dr. Rebecca Martinez conducted the most thorough examination of her career. The physical damage was extensive: malnutrition, muscle atrophy, chronic dehydration, but the psychological trauma was even more severe. This wasn't punishment. Dr. Martinez told investigators. This was systematic psychological torture, designed to break a child's spirit while keeping her alive. The fact that she maintained hope for 3 years shows remarkable resilience, but the damage will take years of specialized treatment to heal. Word spread through the special operations community with the speed of tactical communications. Within hours, Zephyr's unit, still deployed overseas, had pooled resources to hire the most aggressive federal prosecutors available. Other military families began sharing their own horror stories about caregivers who'd seemed perfect on paper. Mrs. Thornfield organized the neighborhood, standing vigil outside the courthouse with signs reading, "Justice for Luna," and "Protect our military children." The local VFW post established a fund for Luna's medical care and long-term rehabilitation. Most importantly, Dr. Elizabeth Brightfield, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery, volunteered her services after seeing the case on national news. "This little girl survived something that would break most adults," she announced. "But children are remarkably resilient. With the right support, intensive therapy, and most importantly, the love of her father, she can heal." The story went viral when photographs of Luna's carved messages were released by the FBI. Justice for Luna trended worldwide, and similar cases began emerging across the country. Congress called for hearings on military family protection, and new legislation was fast-tracked to prevent similar tragedies. Morgana's federal trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented evidence so overwhelming that her court-appointed attorney advised immediate guilty plea negotiations. She was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole, plus mandatory payment of $2.3 million in restitution for Luna's care and rehabilitation. But more than legal justice, there was cosmic reckoning. Her name became synonymous with the betrayal of military families. Her psychology licenses were permanently revoked. The background check system that had failed to detect her psychopathy was completely overhauled. Most satisfying was the personal justice. Luna never had to testify. Her messages carved into wood spoke louder than any child's voice could have. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Recovery was measured in microscopic victories. The first time Luna slept in a real bed without nightmares, Zephyr cried. When she wrote her first story since his return, about a princess who saved herself, he framed it like the Declaration of Independence. Dr. Brightfield worked with them both, teaching Luna that wooden boxes were for storage, not for little girls. Art therapy slowly restored her connection to creativity. There were setbacks, nights when she woke screaming, days when she reverted to scratching tally marks on walls. But there were breakthroughs too. The day she laughed at his terrible jokes. The afternoon she asked to paint together in the basement. The morning she hugged him without trembling. Most importantly, she kept counting days. But now they were days of freedom, days of healing, days of hope fulfilled. 2 years later, Zephyr had taken early retirement from special operations. His daughter needed him more than the military did. And for the first time in his adult life, the choice was easy. They moved to a small mountain town where nobody knew their story. Zephyr found work as a security consultant, jobs that let him work from home and be present for every moment of Luna's continued healing. Their new basement became the underground kingdom too, brighter, safer, and filled with more art supplies than any child could ever use. Luna's latest project was a wooden sculpture, not carved with desperate fingernails, but crafted with proper tools, depicting a knight and princess standing together victorious. One evening, as Zephyr tucked her into her own bed, the first bed she'd slept in comfortably for 5 years, Luna looked up at him with eyes that had remembered how to sparkle. "Daddy," she whispered, her hands resting comfortably on her blanket, no longer bearing the scars of desperate scratching. "Yes, little warrior, I want to help other kids who get locked up. When I grow up, I want to be the person who opens the boxes." He kissed her forehead, just like he used to do, just like he always would. "You already are, Luna. You already are." Outside their window, mountain stars painted the sky with silver light. Inside their home, a father and daughter were learning that love could survive anything, heal anything, overcome anything, even when that love comes home to find its most precious treasure locked in a wooden box, counting days and carving desperate pleas for rescue into splintered wood, because sometimes The greatest battles aren't fought on foreign battlefields against enemy combatants. Sometimes they're fought in American basements against monsters who smile while they systematically destroy innocent souls. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. Not because they're stronger or better armed, but because they refuse to surrender what matters most, their children's right to be free, to create, to hope, to count days not as a prisoner marking time until rescue, but as a beloved daughter celebrating each moment of freedom with the father who never stopped fighting to bring her home.